So, you've been writing music for a little while now, and maybe you've got some songs that you really like, and you're thinking about sharing them online, but you've never done so before. Maybe you're a little nervous, or a lot nervous about doing so, or maybe you're just not sure how best to go about it, or what your options really are. In this video, we'll demystify the process for you and give you the encouragement you need to start getting your music out there. Hi, I'm Brian from Unmute Your Muse TV, where we teach 5-minute masterclasses for songwriters. We use the Gold Song solution to help you write the kinds of songs that people will love, buy, and tell their friends about. Now, before we dive into things, let me just point out what we will not be doing in this video. We are not going to be talking about the specifics of how to upload and distribute your music onto any specific online platform. There are just way too many of them out there for us to go into any detail. And each platform should have relatively good instructions on their own site. We will, however, reference some of the bigger platforms and why you may or may not want to use them depending on what your goals are. We will be talking about some of your main options and point you in some good directions if a more advanced marketing and money-making strategy is what you're thinking about. So, what will we actually be talking about in this video? This video is for songwriters who want to share their original music online for the first time but aren't sure how to proceed. We'll go into the who, what, when, where, and why of online music. And hopefully, by the end, some of your nervousness and confusion will have been removed. So, let's dive into things. Today's main takeaway is, if you're writing songs, there's really no good reason not to share them. As with most things in life, it's usually a good idea to spend a little bit of time thinking about why you're pursuing something new before you get too deeply involved. And that definitely holds true for online music. So, why do people share their music online? At the core, for most of us anyway, I think it's because we have something to say. We write songs as a means of processing our own inner thoughts and feelings, but we choose to do so in a way that is implicitly meant to be heard. Is a song that's never heard really a song? Some of us got into music because we want people to hear and see us, and others are scared of the idea of putting their original music out there into the world. Regardless, music is meant to be heard, and if you're writing good songs, then there's really no good reason not to share them. Now, another reason that some people share their original music online is for feedback as part of the songwriting process. While it can be scary to be specifically asking for criticism of your song, it can also be a really helpful way to help raise the bar on your songwriting. If that's something you're interested in, I made a whole video on the best ways to ask for constructive criticism, which you can find here. And yet another reason that people post their music online is to make money. Now, we're only going to skirt around the edges of this issue today. Unmute Your Muse teaches songwriting and not marketing, and there are plenty of other resources out there which can teach you how to do this. But later on, we will talk a little bit about your options and how you can get started if that's something that you're interested in. Now, who should be sharing original online music? Everybody. If you've got original music, there's really no reason for you not to be sharing it. Even if you're a total beginner and you only just wrote your first song, what do you got to lose? Plus, if you've got aspirations of building a following for your act or of ever making any money with your music now or in the future, you're going to have to start getting your music out there. Now, a slightly more complicated question is what exactly you should share online. First, there's the question of whether you should be sharing live performances versus studio recordings, of audio only versus audio and video together, and of finished versus not quite yet done songs. So let's take a look at each of those one at a time. First, we'll look at the difference between live performances and studio recordings. And by studio, I mean either a home studio or a professional studio. Studio recordings have the benefit of being generally higher quality, if done right. You can incorporate a much wider variety of instrumentation and be much more precise with your mixing and editing. Now, you don't necessarily have to sink thousands of dollars into a studio recording before you share it with the world. With today's exponentially improving technology, there are affordable ways for you to make decent recordings from home on a very limited budget. Actually, in next week's video, we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of home recording for songwriters, so make sure that you come back and check that out. Now, if you're going to be sharing studio recordings, you're going to want to be a little bit more critical with the quality than you would with a live performance. Make sure that the vocals and the music are balanced appropriately, that there's not any clipping, but that the gain is sufficient to be used across a variety of devices. Now, with live performances, things can be much more straight ahead. You won't necessarily have to worry about balancing a whole bunch of different instruments or worrying about effects. Streaming a live performance will almost always be done with video, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. Now, when you're performing live, there is always the potential for mistakes. You might forget a line or play a wrong chord, and that's totally fine. People expect that kind of thing when they're watching a live performance, and they won't hold it against you. In fact, many listeners actually prefer the more authentic experience of listening to live performances. You should be prepared and do your absolute best, of course, but you shouldn't expect a live performance to sound exactly like a studio recording. Now let's look at the question of using audio or video format to share your songs. And here's my recommendation. If you're just getting started, I'd recommend starting with doing some live streaming performances of your songs. You can literally just use your phone, no other technology required. And then, once you've gotten comfortable doing that, I'd recommend working on some audio-only recordings. Again, I'll be putting out a video on basic home recording next week, so make sure to check back for that. Then, later on down the road, once you've gotten comfortable with making high-quality audio recordings, I definitely encourage you to think about converting some of those audio recordings into video. Now again, these days making decent quality videos can happen with a minimal amounts of equipment and rather affordably. But if you've been making decent audio recordings for a while, I definitely encourage you to look into it. Videos can grab listeners' attention on social media in a way that audio-only recordings can't. Plus, it gives you another potential outlet for your creativity, doing some visual storytelling to accompany what you already do as a songwriter. And then finally, there's the question of whether to share only finished songs or if it's okay to share ideas that aren't quite fully done yet. Now, some people have some pretty strong opinions about this, but here's my thought. I definitely recommend sharing songs that you're in the process of writing with other songwriters that you can trust. And if you're not already a member, you should definitely join our Facebook group. It's called the Unstuck Songwriter Society, and you can find a link to it in the description below. We've intentionally been cultivating the kind of people who can give you the kind of constructive criticism that will actually help make your songs better. Now, I think there's also something to be said for sharing unfinished songs with your fans. And one of the best ways that I've seen this done is to do some A/B testing with your superfans. So for example, if you've got Patreon supporters or something like that, one thing that you could do is share two different versions of a chorus for a song that you're working on, and then let your fans decide which one they'd like better. That keeps them involved in the process and even gives them a sense of ownership, so then they'll be much more likely to continue to be engaged with what you are doing. Alright, now let's look at where to share your music. And as I said in the beginning, there's nowhere near enough time in a video like this to even mention all of the different platforms that are out there. But I'm going to point you to some of the big ones and how you can maybe make best use of them for whatever your goals are. And like I mentioned just a little bit ago, if you're just getting started, I'd recommend with doing some live video performances first. And the best place to do that is either Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Both are incredibly easy to use, and the only thing that you need is an account and a smartphone. And in our post-coronavirus world, there's also an increasing number of virtual open mics happening on a number of different platforms, and I definitely encourage you to get involved with some of these. And then later on, once you've gotten some decent quality audio recordings, the first thing you should get is a SoundCloud account. You can start with a free account and then later upgrade to Pro once you have a bigger batch of music to share. Now, the benefit of having your music on SoundCloud is that it makes it really easy to share your music on the various social media platforms. For example, it's almost impossible to share an MP3 straight onto your Facebook feed, but it's a simple thing to share a link to your song that's already on your SoundCloud account. Now, if you're interested in making it possible for people to pay you for their music, you might want to explore Bandcamp. They let listeners download your music for a certain minimum fee, which you get to set, but listeners are also encouraged to pay more than the minimum to support the artists that they like, and a lot of people are really willing to do that. And paired with a good social media strategy, I've actually seen some artists make a fair deal of money this way. Now, so far as sharing your music on social media goes, my biggest piece of advice is pick one platform and get good at it. The most obvious place to start is Facebook and YouTube, but right now other hot places include Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit. But seriously, you'll get much better traction developing a following if you're consistently putting material out there on one platform rather than just randomly throwing your stuff all over the internet. And finally, once you've got some decent recordings and a big enough following, you might want to explore some of the streaming services like Apple Music or Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Play, etc. Many of these require a setup fee, but they'll eventually give you some financial kickback based on the number of streams that you have. Though honestly, you'll need to have a pretty huge following to make any serious money that way. Now, when should you share your music? In case I haven't made my position clear by now, you should share your music yesterday. Seriously, get it out there. You've got something to say, and you've already put the work into crafting some songs. Now bless the world with a chance for people to hear it. If you're trying to establish a serious fan base, maybe on the way to making some actual money with your music, you may want to develop a plan for regularly releasing content to your fans. But like I said, I teach songwriting and not marketing strategies, so you're going to have to go elsewhere to look for guidance on that. Now, one last thought before I go. One thing that holds people back from sharing their music online is a fear of people not liking it. Now, I've got a lot to say about that. And so much, in fact, that I'm probably going to be doing a whole video on that in the not too distant future. But just to wrap things up today, let me leave you with this. If you share your music online, you will have people that don't like it. And many of them will go out of their way to tell you that they don't like it, sometimes in unnecessarily mean ways. There's really no avoiding that. But don't forget, music is an art, and people are going to have all sorts of subjective reactions to it. So don't take it personally or let it keep you from writing more music. It's totally unrealistic to think that everybody who hears your song is going to love it. No song ever written by anybody can claim that. All right, I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully at least it got you inspired to go out there and share some of what you've been working on. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to comment on the video, or if you haven't already done so, join our Facebook group where you can interact with a whole bunch of other songwriters who are working through these issues just like you are. There's a link in the description box below. All right, everybody, take care and keep writing.